the guns have fallen silent at the border. One assumes that people along the line of control would have, of course, heaved a sigh of relief, because what had happened in the course of the last 4 odd days was almost in many ways unprecedented. We seem to have lost my colleague Idris Loan. We'll try and get him back online. But remember, the scenes that we witnessed, these saturation drone attacks that Pakistan had resorted to, resulting in complete blackouts. The last time there were complete blackouts that we had witnessed was way back in 1971. That's almost 54 years ago. Not in the last 5 decades had India witnessed the kind of blackouts that we witnessed. During the Kargil war, that had been a limited conflict. But the manner...
This press briefing on Operation Sindoor and related developments, we have with us Commodore Ravi Nair, Colonel Sophia Qureshi, and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh to brief you. With that, I hand over the floor to Commodore Nair.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As the Foreign Secretary had said, you're aware there's an understanding that has been reached to stop all military activities at sea, on the air and on the land. And the Indian Navy, Indian Army and the Indian Air Force have been instructed to adhere to this understanding. Since the tragic events at Pahalgam, you're aware that our responses have been measured and very responsible. Details of these have been shared with you over the past few days through our various press briefings. What has also happened is that there is a significant amount of misinformation that is being undertaken from the other side. And as a professional military organization, we thought it is also our duty to dispel those misinformation aspects, as also state the facts of the case as they stand. Towards that, I will now hand over to my colleague, Colonel Qureshi.
नमस्कार। अब मैं आपको पाकिस्तान की मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन के बारे में अवगत कराऊंगी। पहला, पाकिस्तान ने यह क्लेम किया कि उसने अपने JF-17 से हमारे S-400 व ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल बेस को नुकसान पहुंचाया, जो कि बिल्कुल गलत है। दूसरा, उसका यह भी मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन था कि हमारी एयरफील्ड, जो कि सिरसा, जम्मू, पठानकोट, बठिंडा, नलिया और भुज में है, ये उसका मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन भी बहुत गलत है। तीसरा, पाकिस्तान के मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन के मुताबिक हमारे एम्यूनिशन डम्प्स जो चंडीगढ़ और बियास में है, उसका डैमेज हुआ, यह भी बिल्कुल गलत है। हमने आपको मॉर्निंग ब्रीफिंग में बताया था विद फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर के साथ कि ये सारी चीज़ें बिल्कुल सही सलामत हैं। अब मैं आपको बताना चाहती हूँ कि पाकिस्तान के एक प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ये बात की गई थी कि उनके सीनियर मिलिट्री ऑफिसर्स, जो कि पूरी तरह से ये भ्रामक हैं और तथ्यों से दूर हैं, कि पाकिस्तान की ओर से ये झूठा आरोप भी लगाया जा रहा है कि भारतीय सेना ने मस्जिदों को नुकसान पहुंचाया। मैं इससे बिल्कुल स्पष्ट करना चाहती हूं कि इंडिया इज ए सेक्युलर नेशन और हमारी सेना भारत के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की एक बहुत प्यारी झलक है। इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस ने पाकिस्तान को बहुत भारी नुकसान पहुंचाया, उनके मिलिट्री इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स को, चाहे वो लैंड एसेट्स हो या फिर उनके एयर एसेट्स। यही नहीं, इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस ने पाकिस्तान की एयरफील्ड स्कर्दू, जकोबाबाद, सरगोदा और बुलारी को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाया। इसके अलावा पाकिस्तान के एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम, रडार सिस्टम, उनको भी एयर स्पेस में अनटेनेबल किया। यह भी बताना चाहती हूँ कि लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल के पास पाकिस्तान के कमांड एंड कंट्रोल, लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशन और उनके मिलिट्री इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, मिलिट्री पर्सनल का इतना भारी नुकसान हुआ कि पाकिस्तान की ऑफेंसिव व डिफेंसिव कैपेबिलिटी को नष्ट कर दिया गया। अंत में मैं फिर से ये बात दोहराना चाहूँगी, इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस पूरी तरह से तैयार है, सतर्क है और भारत की संप्रभुता और अखंडता की रक्षा के लिए पूरी तरह से कमिटेड है। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद। Several attempts were made by Pakistan on spreading a misinformation campaign, as we have seen for the last few days. There were attempts made to say that our S-400 at a northern base was destroyed, which was completely false, and that it was destroyed by a JF-17. It was a false information. Also, that the BrahMos installation was attacked and it was destroyed was false. The destruction of airfields at Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Bhuj, Nalia, etc. was also a false claim. The forward ammunition dump at Chandigarh and Beas are also fit and fine, and we showed you these in the photographs in the morning briefing today. Also, there was a certain different way of miscampaign that Pakistan conducted by its press conferences, which was conducted in a manner which was completely misleading and devoid of facts. Pakistan has been spreading fabricated allegations that the Indian armed forces have targeted mosques. Let us make this very clear here that India is a secular nation and the Indian armed forces are a reflection of our constitutional values. We hold every place of worship of all faiths in the highest regard. Our operations have been aimed exclusively at terrorist camps and facilities being used for anti-India activities. No religious sites, I repeat, no religious sites have been targeted by the Indian Armed Forces. Over the past few days, as we have seen, Pakistan all has suffered very heavy and unsustainable losses after it has given us an unprovoked attack on our installations. It has suffered losses in both land and air. There has been an extensive damage to the crucial Pakistani air bases like Skardu, Sargodha, Jacobabad and Bholari. In addition, a loss of AD weapon system and radars made the defense of Pakistani airspace untenable. Across the line of control, extensive and precise damage to military infrastructure and command control centers and logistic installations. In addition to that, 2 military personnel had led to complete breakdown of its defensive and offensive capability and also Pakistani morale.
In conclusion, let me reiterate that whilst we will be adhering to the understanding that has been reached today, that is the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force, we remain fully prepared and ever vigilant and committed to defending the sovereignty and integrity of the motherland. Every misadventure by Pakistan has been met with strength, and every future escalation will invite a decisive response. We remain fully operationally ready to launch whatever operations may be required in defense of the nation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. With that, we come to the closure of this press briefing. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was the press briefing there, busting some of the misinformation that had been spread via social media handles about what was happening in the course of this war. And there, the Indian side now making it abundantly clear that a lot of the misinformation that had been peddled by the Pakistani handles simply did not happen. There were many issues that were, of course, highlighted and brought forth because in the fog of war, remember, information too is something that is put out, which is done for what are known as PSYOPs, and this is something that the Pakistani side had been resorting to. A number of different things had been said, and each of those has now been busted in that press briefing that we just heard there, stating that S-400 air defense system had been destroyed by a JF-17. This is what the Pakistanis have been peddling since morning, but that has been categorically said to be false, and a number of other issues were also raised that have all been completely debunked as propaganda that had been peddled in the aftermath of what had been happening since yesterday night. And ceasefire has come into effect between India and Pakistan at 1700 hours Indian Standard Time. It was mediated by the Americans. And to help us make sense of what's in fact been transpiring here, we are joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, who's an Indian diplomat. Prabhu Dayal had in fact been a part of the Indian Foreign Service. He joined in 1976 and had served in a number of high-ranking positions, including as the Ambassador of Morocco and Ambassador of Kuwait, and he was also the Consul General in Dubai. Ambassador Dayal, this is a big moment. Now, India and Pakistan, who seem to be, on an escalatory ladder leading to an all-out war, have out of the blue announced a ceasefire that has been mediated by the Americans. In your assessment, what exactly has happened here, considering the heavy military activity that has been unfolding in the last 72 hours?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. You have rightly said that what we were witnessing was an escalatory trend. Now, from the very beginning, India had categorically said that it was targeting only the terrorist camps which were located in Pakistan, and we struck 9 sites. We had also said that our approach was non-escalatory, but if Pakistan escalates, we would retaliate. And that is precisely what happened. Pakistan tried to escalate the matter, and then we hit back very hard. Now, there are a few things which are very significant. Pakistan was not in a position to keep paying the high costs of an escalatory conflict. It is said that, you can fool some people for some time, but you can't fool all the people for all the time. Pakistan had been indulging in fake propaganda. But naturally, that fake propaganda was beginning to reveal its fakeness even to the Pakistanis. So it was very clear that the costs were becoming increasingly heavier for the Pakistanis. Secondly, there is no comparison between the might of the Indian state and that of Pakistan. Pakistan has been weakened a lot, firstly because of internal strifes, and secondly because of a tottering economy. And you contrast that with the strength of India, and the Pakistanis knew that this was not a good thing for them to escalate the tensions and the conflict. So there were compelling reasons why the Pakistanis wanted to de-escalate, but perhaps they didn't know how to go about it. And significantly, the United States played a very good role in mediating between the two sides. President Trump, in fact, was the first person to announce on his social media platform that the United States had mediated all night long between the two sides, and the ceasefire had been agreed upon. So it was the United States which played a very important and a very significant role in the de-escalation and reaching the ceasefire. Now, I may also mention that the United States probably held out something for Pakistan as a bait.
Right.
Something which would attract them. Now, let us recall the fact that yesterday there was the IMF meeting. And despite our opposition, Pakistan was given a $1 billion package, which with promises for more to follow. Mm-hmm. Now, we were upset that this had happened. But the fact is that it appears that the Americans, who are really the leading country as far as the deliberations in the IMF are concerned, they held this out as a sop to the Pakistanis. We give you this, but you have to take the initiative for a ceasefire. And that is why the Pakistani DGMO called our side and proposed the ceasefire. The initiative came from the Pakistanis, but behind all that certainly was the role of the United States. So I am very happy that a ceasefire has happened. I am not prepared to say that the Pakistanis will change colors. No, because their tendency to harbor terrorists and to use covert terrorism against India is not going to change with this ceasefire. So as our side has made it very clear, we have to remain very vigilant. We have to remain on guard because the danger from Pakistan will continue. Their generals have been saying we'll bleed India by 1,000 cuts, and we are prepared for any mischief that they do. But for the moment, it's a good thing that the ceasefire has taken place. Let us remember that our Prime Minister himself has been saying it is not an era of war. The Prime Minister doesn't believe in war, but he had been provoked into taking action against the terrorist camps because of the terror attack on Pahalgam. So
Right.
India never wanted to escalate. It is Pakistan which escalated. We have retaliated, and if they want a ceasefire, it's very good.
All right, very interesting.
Ambassador Dayal, if I can also ask you to comment on how crucially and clearly India has given out a strong message when it comes to zero tolerance on terror. Right before the announcement of the ceasefire, we saw that messaging coming in once again. India saying that an act of terror will be taken as an act of war. So all throughout, India has maintained that it wasn't interested in an escalation, while Pakistan maintained and continued with its escalatory and provocative moves. And now we've seen the reiteration of India's stance on terrorism coming in very clearly once again.
You're absolutely right. India had made it clear from the start that we would have zero tolerance for terror. In fact, the strike on the 9 sites in Pakistan was necessitated because of the terror attack in Pahalgam. So we never had the intention to engage in a conflict with Pakistan. Pakistan, however, bears the responsibility for having escalated the matter. It should have let the matter rest with the 9 strikes because these were in line with our policy to strike at terror. But Pakistan escalated, and we only retaliated, as I said earlier. And if Pakistan has started feeling the heat and wants the ceasefire, it shows that it can't sustain a conflict. And this is a lesson which the Pakistani military establishment must draw. India's defenses are extremely well organized. We have shown that our S-400 missile air defense system is state-of-the-art, and we would be able to annul any effort from the part of the Pakistanis to attack us. So this message has gone across very, very clearly. Now, I must say that it has been made very clear by our side that we will remain on guard. And that is a message which goes across to Pakistan.
Right.
Don't try nonsense with us. We are on guard, and we'll hit you again.
Ambassador, it's interesting that you mentioned that, in the course of these negotiations, the Americans would have held out some carrot for the Pakistanis. Considering that Pakistan has been moving closer to China, is buying more and more of the Chinese weapons, the fact that Donald Trump, as soon as he entered office, gave $400 million for the Pakistanis to upgrade their old and aging F-16 fighter jets. In your assessment, what do you think is the carrot that has been dangled in front of the Pakistanis by the Americans to somehow make them see sense here?
Well, as I said earlier during our discussion, at the IMF meeting yesterday, Pakistan was given a $1 billion loan. And Pakistan really needs that loan if it has to tighten up its economy. And Pakistan's economy is in shambles. And I'm sure there were some negotiations behind the scenes because we were not happy that Pakistan got this loan from the IMF. But apparently, there were some behind-the-scenes negotiations. And I would be surprised if the Americans held out this bait to Pakistan that, look, you can get this loan, but stop this war with India. Because this war was not going to suit anybody except perhaps the Chinese. The Chinese want to use the Pakistanis to target India. In fact, that's the reason why they have been giving so much of weaponry to Pakistan. So there is no doubt, everybody knows what the Chinese game plan is. And the Americans also realize that a conflict between India and Pakistan, if it escalates, then the only people who would be smiling would be the Chinese, because that's what they want. So it's a good step that the Americans have taken to negotiate with the Pakistanis behind the scenes. It's a good development that the Pakistanis have realized that they should not prolong this conflict, that escalation is not in their interest, and that they have taken the step to call the Indian DGMO. I think that this is a good development, but we have to remain on guard.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned this war by 1,000 cuts that the Pakistanis have been waging against India when they carry out these terror attacks. But the fact is the Pakistani government every time turns around and denies that, it or its military was directly involved. But this conflict, do you think that changes the rules of engagement between India and Pakistan with respect to terror attacks?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as that, because I was posted in Pakistan in the early 1980s. And at that time, their generals would speak to the young military cadets and try to tell them that their policy is to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. And that has remained their policy. Generals have come and gone, prime ministers have come and gone, presidents in Pakistan has come and gone. But this policy, which was enunciated by the Pakistani generals in the early 1980s, continues to be the truth till today. So I don't expect that there could be a change in the gene of Pakistan. That gene continues to be anti-Indian, to somehow find a way to hurt India. And the nexus between the armed forces and the terrorist organizations is not going to end, because these terrorist organizations are used by Pakistan. So perhaps matters will be cool for some time. We will not see any outburst of activity. But whether I take it as an end to Pakistani policies in regard to terrorism, certainly not. Their policies will continue to be mischievous. There will continue to be links between the Pakistan military establishment, particularly the ISI and the terror outfits. The Pakistani authorities will continue to fund, finance, arm, and train these terrorists in the hope that somehow or the other, some terrorist attack someday will be inflicted on India, and their objective of trying to bleed India by 1,000 cuts will continue to get fulfilled. I don't read much into the Pakistani disavowal of the situation. Pakistan's intentions remain the same, and I must say that India has to remain vigilant at all times.
Indeed, Ambassador, do continue to stay on with us. My colleague Idris Loan is, of course, joining us from Srinagar. So, Idris, as dusk begins to fall this evening in Srinagar, the fact that a ceasefire has now come into effect since 1700 hours, gives a sense of what is happening at this moment, because it is the people who are living at the line of control who are the worst affected in the flare-up of violence between India and Pakistan.
Well, absolutely, Saleh. There is a sigh of relief among the people of Jammu and Kashmir, especially the ones who live very close to the line of control. Last 2 days, we've seen people did not venture out of their homes. They stayed inside. And just after the ceasefire was announced, the people are back on the roads. I'd like my cameraman to pan and show you exactly what is the scene right now in Srinagar, where you can see people finally coming out on the roads. The shops have suddenly opened again, and the people who were for 2 days just inside their houses have started slowly coming out as well. It's a big relief for the people who live close to the line of control as well as international border. We've seen around 22 people died in the ceasefire violations in the last few days in Poonch, Rajouri, as well as in the northern part of Kashmir. Around 60 people were injured who are still being treated at the hospitals across Jammu and Kashmir. So this is a big relief for those people actually, because they have to live through it. They have to face the consequences of it. Properties worth crores have been damaged all over northern part of Kashmir, whether it's Kupwara, Baramulla, Udi. For that matter, we saw ceasefire violation in Gurez sector today as well. On the other hand, we also saw ceasefire violation in Poonch, Rajouri and other parts of Kashmir Valley. So this is a big relief for those people who live close to the line of control. They have lost their houses. A lot of them have lost their properties, houses, cattle in the last few days. They will have to rebuild it again. But at least there is a sigh of relief that there is peace finally returning to Kashmir Valley, especially to the areas which are very close to the line of control and international border.
Absolutely, indeed, Idris. We see that some of the people are out on the streets. Now, considering the kind of tensions that have prevailed and considering the kind of blackouts that have been witnessed over the course of the last 3-4 days, at this moment, it's time for the people along the line of control to pick up the pieces. These ceasefire violations and a hot conflict between India and Pakistan affects the people, along the line of control and the people in the Kashmir Valley the most. So give us a sense of what the expectation of the people, the local people, is there of how this conflict needs to be resolved.
Well, Saleh, if we talk about the people especially living close to the line of control and international border, let me tell you, when the agreement between the Pakistan and India, the ceasefire agreement, was renewed in 2021, after that time we did see peace returning to a line of control. Otherwise, it used to be hell living very close to the line of control for at least a decade. There would be ceasefire violations every second day, and they would not only attack the army installations but also the civilian population, and that was the case for decades. But after the agreement was renewed in 2021, we saw that there was finally peace returning to Kashmir Valley on the line of control as well as international border. On the other hand, when the Pahalgam attack happened, right after that, the ceasefire violations started again. It was every single night. From the last 15 consecutive nights, we've seen massive shelling going on from the Pakistani side. And it was back to that decade where what people were facing at that point of time. And it was a terrible, difficult time for the people who live close to the line of control. As I said, around 22 people have died in the last few days in this ceasefire shelling, and on the other hand 60 people were injured, were still being treated. Houses completely destroyed, burned down by the shelling that has taken place in the last few days. They've lost their farms, they've lost their cattle. That is what their livelihood basically is. And this has been a nightmare for those people living close to the line of control. Not only if we talk about the line of control and the international border, but even people living in cities. We did see the drone attack taking place in Jammu, where people after that have hardly come out of their homes. There is a lot of panic that people witnessed in the last 48 hours across Jammu and Kashmir. Srinagar also last night we saw how the drone attack took place, missile attack took place, and in the early morning at around 5:45 we saw those 3 big blasts taking place in Srinagar as well. So it has been a big relief that finally ceasefire has been announced between the two countries, and people in Jammu and Kashmir can breathe finally a sigh of relief for them.
Indeed, that of course is the big story at this moment. There is the people along the line of control, the people in the Kashmir Valley, and also in all those regions who'd been affected because this flare-up of tensions can of course now breathe a sigh of relief. This is a huge moment. My colleague Molly Gambhir of course joins me in the studio. Molly, this is big. The fact that the way things were just escalating, it did appear that things could just go out of hand considering what had been happening for the last 48 hours. But the fact that the two nations have now come together, Pakistan seems to have seen some sense where the Pakistani foreign minister now says that Pakistan does not want war, clearly contradicting the defense minister from what he had said last night. It now remains to be seen as to how things, of course, proceed from here. But what is clear is that the terms of engagement on terror attacks, that seems to have changed. And this could be a new normal that we're now looking at, considering the fact that India has made it pretty clear that any act of terror by the Pakistanis in future will be seen as an act of war.
Indeed, and India has made its position, its message, its stance absolutely clear when it comes to zero tolerance on terror. In fact, that strong message that came in before the announcement of the ceasefire, where India said that an act of terror will be taken as an act of war. And then we saw the announcement of the ceasefire coming in through US mediation. First of all, we had that post put out by Donald Trump talking about how the mediation continued through the night. This, of course, coming at a very crucial point, as we've been outlining for our viewers, where Pakistan was continuing with its escalatory moves while India had maintained that while it is not interested in an escalation, it will respond befittingly to Pakistan's moves, and so it did. We've seen how on the ground as well, we've been getting you a sense of the preparedness on part of India, and how Pakistan, on the other hand, had been resorting to those escalatory moves. A breakthrough now that's come in at a very significant juncture where India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire. Going back across now to our correspondent Idris Lone, who's been tracking those developments on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. Idris, if you've had a chance to speak to any of the locals at this point, just to get in a sense of the reactions and tell us more about the mood on the ground. This, of course, coming at a time when we've been constantly, through you, getting those updates of what the mood was like in parts of Jammu and Kashmir, where we've seen the drone attacks as well taking place on Pakistan, and last night as well, that second consecutive night of the Pakistani aggression, as a result of which we've seen the kind of impact on the ground as well. But this, of course, is a moment that comes as you've been saying, a huge sigh of relief for the people on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir specifically.
Well, absolutely, Molly. Right now, people back out on the street. We are right now in Lal Chowk. As you can see, this is the Gantaghar, the clock tower place, where people are finally out. This has been completely deserted in the last 2 days. Nobody out on the streets. But now we see people, children, finally laughing, smiling and coming out on the streets. The last 48 hours have been extremely difficult for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We've seen the panic that was created because of the drone attacks that were taking place all across Jammu and Kashmir, whether it was the Jammu city or whether it was Srinagar that saw these drone attacks in the early morning today. There were multiple blasts that took place across Srinagar city also. So there was a lot of panic among the people from the last 48 hours. We've seen, Molly, in the last few days, around 22 people have died during the shelling that took place from across the border. Around 60 people were injured. They're still being treated at different hospitals across Jammu and Kashmir. On the other hand, we've just got to know that the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Mehbooba Mufti, has welcomed the ceasefire between the two countries. Umar Abdullah, the current Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, has also welcomed this step and said this is a great initiative by both the countries. This is exactly what the people of Jammu and Kashmir needed. We've seen the people who live very close to the line of control and international border have basically been facing and bearing the brunt of all the violence, the kind of violence that we've seen in the last 48 hours, especially heavy mortar shelling coming from across the border, not only attacking the army installations, security forces installations or bunkers or posts, but also the houses of the civilians. We've seen how the commercial properties, the cattle, the farms, everything has been destroyed in the places very close to the line of control and international border, and it will take them a long time to rebuild their houses, to rebuild their lives again. But nevertheless, it is a great news for all of them as well, so that they can actually return back to their houses.
Indeed, Idris, what a strong contrast those images are from last night itself, when Jammu witnessed that blackout and the Pakistani aggression had continued, and now we've seen those people out and about on the streets. Stay with me, Idris. Breaking developments coming in right this minute of a crucial meeting taking place. This is a crucial meeting underway at Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's residence. In fact, the NSA Ajit Doval meeting Prime Minister Modi at his residence. The External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, the Foreign Secretary also have arrived at the Prime Minister's residence. The CDS, the Army Chief, Air Force Chief, Navy Chief also present in that meeting. This taking place short while after the announcement of the ceasefire. We have been telling you about the statement that has been coming in about the kind of mediation that took place on part of the United States to make this ceasefire come in at a very crucial time, when we had seen the kind of situation that was unfolding as far as the India-Pakistan tensions and the conflict is concerned. This crucial meeting that is now underway at the Indian Prime Minister's residence after the announcement of the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Let's also talk about the messaging that's come in from India before the announcement of the ceasefire, where it has reiterated its zero tolerance on terror, and through Indian government sources, that messaging, that statement that came in before the announcement of the ceasefire about how an act of terror will be taken as an act of war. And a while after that, just a short while after that, we saw the announcement of the ceasefire coming in with the Indian Foreign Secretary announcing that India has agreed to ceasefire. But all throughout, India's messaging has been absolutely clear. We also need to highlight that India has maintained categorically all throughout, amid those tensions as well, that it is not interested in an escalation. And we have been telling you about what things have looked like today as well, earlier in the run-up to the ceasefire. And a reaction coming in also from the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah, welcoming the ceasefire. We have been telling you about what things are looking like on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir, where our correspondent Idris Lone has been telling us more about what a sigh of relief this is, and how the mood is shifting on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir, which of course has undergone and witnessed a tense period as a result of Pakistan's aggression that continued. And we also have been getting you a sense of the reactions that have been coming in, and what this announcement of ceasefire means for the India-Pakistan side, and also talking about how this truce is in effect after the American mediation that took place. India's message has been absolutely clear. Remember earlier as well, when we saw the statement coming in from the US side, at that point as well, earlier Marco Rubio had maintained and given out that word about how Pakistan must end its support to terror. So all throughout, that messaging has been absolutely clear. We're also getting in a reaction from Defense and Strategic Affairs expert Major General Rajesh Kundra with us on the broadcast this minute. Your initial reaction to the announcement of the ceasefire, given the way the situation was unfolding, what do you think really happened as far as the Pakistani side is concerned, especially?
Thank you for getting me on the show. I think the whole thing has panned out exactly the way I had anticipated. India had done a phenomenal, very calculated and calibrated ops of a very high order. And the way the reactions came from Pakistan's side was quite evident that they can't withstand this onslaught what India has given down on them. And I was looking forward that Pakistan will back down at a particular point, and it has come through. There's certain things which actually emerge out of this particular operation, what has gone so far, which is very important to bring down here, is the superiority of India equipment and Indian training and professional standards. I think that actually surpasses any and everything which actually can be countered with Pakistan. And Pakistan actually on the other side has come out quite exposed as far as the training is concerned and the equipment and the standards are concerned. Next thing which actually emerges out is that the equipment which they've been using, of whichever country or region they aren't of that superior standards to match up to the Indian side of it. The other thing which emerges out is the indigenous equipment which actually was used in this particular battle, and it emerged a victor. And I'm very positive as time goes by, you will find the world turning towards India to coming and buying our equipment, because we have proven it that we have done it well and we have done it the best. And not only that, the Make in India has emerged a victor here, and it's a thing which is on display for everyone to see for themselves. The next thing which emerges is India has shown itself to be a very responsible partner, which the way we had gone across, we had calibrated our ops only for terrorist organizations. We never went down to civil areas or military areas. It was Pakistan which was desperate because they didn't know how to react to the whole thing. So Pakistan actually stood exposed on this particular aspect. Having said all this, what I've said, I would like to put in a little red line here is we have to be prepared for the times that it comes by. The army is prepared. But only thing is that we have to actually galvanize ourselves as far as the internal security is concerned, because Pakistan has seen that it is nowhere close to matching up India on the battlefield. And they are now going to turn towards exploiting our internal divisions. And that is where we have to be very careful of. And not only that, Army has to also be careful of the internal turmoil which are happening and keep ourselves abreast of that particular thing. And I must compliment Indian Army for an outstanding exhibition of power, what they have done, and it has made India proud.
Indeed. Stay on with me, please. Let's also listen into what the Indian Foreign Secretary had to say, and this reaction coming in from the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir as well.
The Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
दोबारा सीज फायर जम्मू कश्मीर और बाकी इलाकों में कायम किया। अब मौजूदा जम्मू कश्मीर की हुकूमत की अब जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि जहाँ जहाँ नुकसान हुआ है, नुकसान का हम मुआयना करें, असेसमेंट करें डैमेज, और उस नुकसान का जो है लोगों को हम रिलीफ पहुँचाना शुरू करें।
And that's a sample of the reactions that have been coming in at this point post the announcement of the ceasefire, a very significant breakthrough. Let's go back across now to our esteemed guest for those reactions. Before we do that, let's also get you this breaking development coming in. Global reactions also trickling in. In fact, in a post on the platform X, US Vice President J.D. Vance has said, and I'm quoting, great work from the President's team, especially Secretary Rubio, and my gratitude to the leaders of India and Pakistan for their hard work and willingness to engage in the ceasefire. So that's the latest statement that's coming in from the American side, where in a post on X, this is the post on your screen, a reiteration of what went on. Remember earlier on, we saw that statement that was put out by US Secretary Marco Rubio. Remember, the announcement of the ceasefire first came in from Donald Trump in that post, where he said that after a long night of talks mediated by the United States, he is pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That was the statement that was put out by the US President. And now in the latest, we have the statement also coming in from US Vice President J.D. Vance, saying great work from the President's team, especially Secretary Rubio, and my gratitude to the leaders of India and Pakistan for their hard work and willingness to engage in the ceasefire. Let's also tell you what US Secretary Marco Rubio had said in a statement just a short while back, where he said that over the past 48 hours, J.D. Vance and Secretary Rubio had engaged with senior Indian and Pakistani officials, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, also Chief of Army Staff Asim Munir, and National Security Advisors of the two sides, and that he was pleased to announce that the governments have agreed to an immediate ceasefire. Going back across now to Major General Rajesh Kundra, who's been getting us his perspectives. Let's also talk about the fact that India, post the Pahalgam terror attack, while it kept reiterating its stance on zero tolerance on terror and the fight against terror, it used that multi-pronged approach, also diplomatically speaking. And the way things panned out for Pakistan in sharp contrast, especially during that UNSC closed-door meeting where it was trying to drum up support, but it actually suffered a setback. So speaking of the way in which India has approached this entire matter, and how its statements, how its stance has come through very clearly.
Absolutely. I think this is a masterpiece case of a good operation conducted. It was not only the military operation. I think everything was synergized. It was economically, diplomatically, militarily, your internal things, even managing the social sector, that is cyber side of things. I think everything has been beautifully orchestrated and coordinated and brought in. I think India has emerged as a superpower now. It's getting into a serious superior power and a power which has to be taken seriously. And I'm very sure after these operations, the West, particularly where they always had little doubt about the Indian cause, they are going to be not turning back and thinking twice when giving their statement against India. So that's, I think, a great achievement which India has been able to do. Apart from that, also, which I feel is that India has emerged in the eyes where now China will also be looking with more uh, depth before they actually get across to way India. Because the way they have anticipated India and India has emerged during these operations, I think that really puts China and other countries which are neighboring us, where we have difficulties, will be looking at us from a different angle. And I think India has really galvanized itself to a higher platform where the world will now look at it more seriously, and now we'll be actually partnering with the superior place where we get a high platform to be part of the world peace process as we go along.
Right, and let's also talk about the role played by the United States. President Trump talking about the mediation that took place through the night, but we do know that those conversations were taking place on part of Marco Rubio in the run-up to the announcement of the ceasefire earlier on as well, and that also told us about the messaging that came in from the American side to Pakistan about ending its support to terror. So that again was a very critical part of that message and that statement.
Absolutely. I totally concur with that particular thing, because the very statement of the vice president at the beginning, that we have nothing to do, please sort out among yourself, was itself an indication that India was given a free hand to go across and achieve the target what they're looking at it. The target what India has been able to achieve actually also is a part target which US wanted it to be achieved, because US is equally concerned about these people being used against them. So it was a thing, and the moment India has been able to achieve, and where Pakistan actually realized that they can't fight it out, so US intervened and said, okay, here we go, and we can stop the war. And because Pakistan went up to them and asking them, okay, we really can't go forward and we are ready to accept it. And that's exactly what has happened.
Indeed, and what do you make of the kind of messaging that came in from Pakistan with the way things panned out, and the kind of nuclear rhetoric that we saw coming in from Pakistan? The world saw the admission, the confession from Khwaja Asif about supporting terror, financing and funding terror organizations, and the way Pakistan had resorted to escalatory and provocative moves, while India had maintained that it was not interested in an escalation.
Yeah. Pakistan actually had been saber rattling. Frankly, they had not much of depth into them. And they have been wanting this to be, they thought that India will back out at a particular point, which it didn't happen. What actually India has proven with these operations to the world is that there is a window which can be utilized to achieve your limited objectives without crossing a threshold. And this window can be increased by getting in technology. And India used technology and used this window effectively. And that is exactly what Pakistan is now scared without asking for to back out. They have also understood that India has achieved a threshold of this technology whereby they can increase this window without going towards the nuclear threshold and thing which is there.
Let's also get in a perspective from you on the very fact that India has made this about the fight against terror. So, post the Pahalgam terror attack, it had said that this is a measured move on part of India. It targeted terror hubs. On the other hand, we saw the way Pakistan responded to that, and the way the aggression continued even till this point when the announcement of the ceasefire came in. So there was a sharp contrast, a major one, in which we saw that messaging coming in from the two sides.
Absolutely. The very fact the thing happened on Pahalgam, India made it clear that the first move has been made by Pakistan, and they are the ones who actually got this terrorist attack onto us, and we have responded to it. And we had a very calculated response towards that, whereby we did not escalate it by crossing border or using other means. We have gone and targeted specific targets of the terrorist where it's there. Where Pakistan was taken aback, which they didn't realize because they were anticipating it will happen in POK and other places. When we hit Punjab areas, that's Bahawalpur and other Gurikhe and others of places, that is actually what surprised, and not only surprised, they were taken aback. And that's where their weakness of Pakistan was exposed, because they didn't have the capability to respond or react to those operations what India happened to do that. And not only that, India had also said that whatever we say, we'll stick to it. And that is what it is coming. Now the last statement, which is now coming down, that any more terrorist attack will be taken as an act of war. I'm sure Pakistan will be worried now. Hereafter, they will be very careful of what they do on our soil. I think India has achieved the aim phenomenally well, what we had moved out for, and we have been able to reach to what we're looking for.
Right, Major General Rajesh Kundra, just a quick roundup for our viewers who might just be tuning in. The announcement of the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, of course, a major breakthrough. The announcement came in from US President Donald Trump, where in that post he talked about the mediation that took place through the night. And now we also have the crucial meeting taking place at the Indian Prime Minister's residence post the announcement of the ceasefire. The Indian Foreign Secretary also talking about how India has agreed to that ceasefire. And in the backdrop, we also have been getting our viewers a sense of what things have looked like on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. We have also been talking about the way in which America has played a crucial role, and the statements that have been coming in from the American side, very interesting, looking at the way it all started. And up until this point now, we've now gotten those statements coming in from Marco Rubio, from J.D. Vance as well, talking about the mediations and the conversations that took place. Major General Kundra, let's also, outline for our viewers the very fact that now this announcement of the ceasefire has happened. What's very crucial to watch out will be what happens from here onwards.
I think the first and foremost thing which actually emerges out is that India stands a victor in all spheres, whether it's diplomatic, whether it's economy, or the war. War, in any case, we have won that big thing. Not only will this will actually help us improve our relations with other countries. The West, particularly, who would see India with a little bit of jaundice eye somewhere, they always thought that would be removed now. Now India would be actually viewed as a serious part and a collaborator now. We'll have less of preaching coming from the West and more of collaboration coming. I think that's one step which I see, a very positive step, which is going to be happening as the time goes by. Apart from that, also I see a phenomenal change in the US stance towards India. This will also solidify the way they had looked India towards now how future collaboration with India is going to be. Because I see that they would have seen that India is now a partner with which they can collaborate on all spheres. I bring the point, all spheres. And that is something which is great. And I see the way US has reacted to these operations. My understanding is the initial bit was given down to India to perform the way they wanted to. And after having achieved their particular aim, they have come in between and tried to mediate and bring in ceasefire. But I think India stands as the victor, and so is in the US now very confident towards India's being a great ally with them. And this particular bonding is going to go in future and get closer and closer, in my understanding.
Right, Major General Rajesh Kuntra, appreciate very much for joining us with those perspectives. Let's also quickly go across now to our correspondent Idris Lone, who is back with us and has been getting us a sense of what things are looking like on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. Idris, over to you. We have already shown our viewers the scenes on the streets where you are, in sharp contrast to what things look like in the run-up to the announcement of the ceasefire.
Well, Molly, from the last 48 hours, we did not see anyone coming out on the streets. People were advised to stay indoors, take shelter, and there was a lot of panic in the air. But after the announcement of the ceasefire, we're seeing that huge number of people are coming out on the streets. We are standing right now in front of the clock tower in Srinagar's Lal Chowk area, where we finally see a lot of people coming out in huge numbers, and also tourists also coming out in big numbers, and basically enjoying and being cheerful that finally they can come out and be free again. We've seen the people, especially living on the line of control and international border, in the last 2 days have been going through extreme difficult conditions. Let me just speak to one of the person who's standing here. So there's been a ceasefire between India and Pakistan just a while ago. How do you feel about it?
Yes, to be. Yeah, I am a foreigner, but every year I am coming in Kashmir. I love so much Srinagar and even the countryside here. Kashmir is a true paradise on earth. So beautiful, so nice climate. And one quality of the Kashmiri is that we are some things that will help each other. There's very strong collectivity, and Kashmir cannot be divided. Like India, I see no border, and peace has to be the main thing. And main thing, I feel so much joy and spirituality in this place. But God has no name, no religions.
Well, that was a French tourist actually who is in Srinagar right now and saying that he feels that Kashmir should be peaceful always, and Kashmir is a peaceful place, and that's why people come here. And now we see a lot of locals also coming out of their houses, because there have been very difficult times in the last 48 hours across the Jammu and Kashmir. We've seen these drone attacks, we've seen infiltration bids as well as ceasefire violations from across the border, which has also led to the death of around 22 people across the line of control, and more than 60 people injured, still being treated at the hospital. Properties worth crores destroyed in the shelling from across the border, whether it was in the northern part of Kashmir or on the international border in Jammu. But now finally we see a lot of tourists coming out as well, who are in Kashmir at the moment, who were stuck because there was airport was shut, the highway was shut also, but it was open today, and we see finally there are a lot of tourists who are out here again. One more tourist we would speak to. Ma'am, there has been a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. How do you feel about it? Are you feeling safe now?
I was any which ways feeling extremely safe even before, because of the Indian army present out here, and now I feel extremely overwhelmed with the ceasefire taking place, because obviously we do not want so many lives to be taken, and we want peace, and India always talks about peace, and that's how we wanted it always. And I'm extremely happy that things are back to normal now. I've been here for about 10 days, and there was a lot of stress, I could see that, but I felt safe, and now I feel even more safer and extremely happy for what has happened.
Thank you. That is the relief that everyone, the locals, the tourists, are actually feeling after the announcement of the ceasefire between both the countries. And now the tourists who were also here saying that they were already relieved that security forces were taking care of the situation, but now they are more relieved that things are back to normal.
Right. Stay with me, Idris, as we continue to get our viewers' reactions coming in. Here's a quick look at the top stories making headlines at this point.
Both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea.
India and Pakistan agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. In a statement, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri announces that military action has been paused as of 5 p.m. IST. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets NSA Ajit Doval, CDS, Army Chief, Air Force Chief, Navy Chief at the Prime Minister's residence. Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah welcomes ceasefire announcement, assures that the J&K government will assess the damage done and start providing relief to the people. And breaking developments coming in right this minute. Government sources saying the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States. Very significant. India-Pakistan talks to continue virtually. Government sources saying India is firm on its stance on terror, and government sources also saying no precondition to the talks, and India's diplomatic actions will remain as is. And this includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, no rollback on visas. Very significant, this statement that's coming in. Government sources saying the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States, and India-Pakistan talks to continue virtually. Government sources also saying India is firm on its stance on terror and that no precondition to talks, India's diplomatic actions will remain as is, and this includes the Indus Waters Treaty and abeyance and no rollback on visas. That's the statement and the messaging coming in from the Indian side. Government sources saying that India's stance on terror is firm and the diplomatic actions will remain as is. Remember, there were a series of moves that were taken by India post the Pahalgam terror attack. We just outlined for you the diplomatic measures that were taken as well by India. And now Indian side, the Indian government sources, the messaging coming in, India's diplomatic actions will remain as is. And this includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. Also, no rollback on visas. Remember, that was the other significant move as a part of the plethora of measures that were undertaken by the Indian side post the Pahalgam terror attack. So it was, like we mentioned, a multi-pronged approach adopted by the Indian side. We are also aware of that crucial meeting that's taking place at the Indian Prime Minister's residence post the announcement of the ceasefire. So we are going to be keeping a close eye on that meeting as well, which is taking place in New Delhi at the Indian Prime Minister's residence. Significant takeaway at this point from the Indian side, where government sources have reiterated that India is firm on its stance on terror and that its diplomatic actions will remain as is. So remember, we were talking about what happens now, what happens next, and where do things really stand right now post the announcement of the ceasefire, what happens. So India, that's a significant takeaway coming in. India's diplomatic actions will remain as is, which includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance and no rollback on visas. Let's also remind our viewers about what the Indian government has said through sources, government sources, pointing out that the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States. That's the other significant takeaway coming in from the Indian side, and that India-Pakistan talks will continue virtually. Government sources also saying that India is firm on its stance on terror. Remember, that has been the underlining of the moves that have been made by India, where its messaging has been absolutely clear when it comes to the fight against terror, when it comes to zero tolerance on terror. In fact, right before the announcement of the ceasefire between India and Pakistan as well, India once again put out that message very significantly, where government sources had said that any act of terror will be taken as an act of war. Let's also get in these reactions that have been coming in post the announcement of the ceasefire.
Occasions, it is Pakistani.
दोबारा सीज फायर जम्मू कश्मीर और बाकी इलाकों में कायम किया। अब मौजूदा जम्मू कश्मीर की हुकूमत की अब जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि जहाँ जहाँ नुकसान हुआ है, नुकसान का हम मुआयना करें, असेसमेंट करें डैमेज, और उस नुकसान का जो है लोगों को हम रिलीफ पहुंचाना शुरू करें।
As the Foreign Secretary had said, you're aware there's an understanding that has been reached to stop all military activities at sea, on the air and on the land. And the Indian Navy, Indian Army and the Indian Air Force have been instructed to adhere to this understanding.
All right, so those are the reactions that we have been getting to you. Let's also remind you that this very significant takeaway coming in from the Indian side, where government sources have said that the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States. Also that India-Pakistan talks will continue virtually. The other significant takeaway at this point is government sources saying that India is firm on its stance on terror, and India's diplomatic actions will remain as is, which includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance and no rollback on visas. Let's go straight across now to Siddhant Sibal for more on that. Siddhant, if you can just elaborate on what you're picking up at this point. India's message when it comes to the fight against terror and its stance on terror, a reiteration coming in from the Indian side, also very significantly that its diplomatic measures will remain in place.
Well, Molly, it has been a long day. In fact, it has been long 4 days, and perhaps history will see these 4 days as pivotal in India putting a new deterrence on Pakistan in terms of how Pakistan behaves in the future. Clearly a message that it's a zero tolerance towards terrorism for the Indian side, and India has been able to also set a new normal with Pakistan. The Indus Water Treaty is in abeyance, but remember that means it remains frozen. India has full right to use the waters of the Indus water and of course the other associated rivers. And we saw briefings after briefings and how India was able to basically inflict a major damage to the Pakistani positions inside Pakistan. This is the first, I would say, since 1971 that India was able to strike deep inside Pakistan. It is a loss of face for the Pakistani leadership, the Pakistani military. Both Islamabad and Rawalpindi clearly will be shaken up by what has happened. We know that the Pakistani Prime Minister is expected to address the media as well very soon, and I do expect the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also addressing in some format very soon over the development. The Americans have been trying to basically claim that it is primarily led by them, but here in New Delhi the mood is different. If you look at the Foreign Secretary's address, clearly he said that it is an understanding, it's not a ceasefire. He never used the word ceasefire. Secondly, this is done bilaterally between India and Pakistan at the DGMO level, who will be meeting again on Monday, and the guns have finally fallen silent, and India has been able to not only send a military response to Pakistan, but also deal with the information warfare with Pakistan. So essentially a big day indeed for the Indian subcontinent.
Right, Siddhant, as we outlined for our viewers, the messaging and the statement coming in from the Indian side, let's also talk about how government sources have pointed out that the diplomatic measures will remain in place. What else are you picking up on that front?
Well, whatever was announced remains like that. That means that the visa system remains like that. The number of diplomats remain same in terms of 30 that was announced by the Indian side. India is not going to reverse what has happened. The action on the Pakistani misinformation machinery remains in same way. India has blocked number of Pakistani channels as well here in India. So no going back on that clearly. And this is an understanding on which there can be more development if Pakistan continues with its ceasefire, which is a term used by the Americans, but the understanding that India has been able to achieve with the Pakistanis. And it was, remember, which has been pointed out by the Foreign Secretary as well, a Pakistani call to the Indian side to tell that it's time that they agree on the understanding that the guns should fall silent.
Indeed, Siddhant, and you have been talking about the fact that India has maintained its stance on terror very categorically and very clearly. In the run-up to the kind of statement that we saw coming in from the Foreign Secretary of India as well about that understanding, we saw how India reiterated that message, talking about how an act of terror will be taken as an act of war.
Well, yes, next time if there is a terror attack, India will be treating it as an act of war. And we have seen India has been able to demonstrate its ability to strike deep inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And the terror, the strikes on the terror camps is a message indeed. Previously, we have seen when it comes to previous measures taken by India that was able to put deterrence on Pakistan, but it looks like that Pakistan was not able to understand what India was wanting from Islamabad and Rawalpindi. And the terror attack which happened in Pahalgam was something that was clearly the red line reached by the Pakistani side, and India gave a strong response to Pakistan on that. Last 4 days we have seen how India has been able to strike deep inside Pakistan and damage key bases of the country.
Right. Stay with me, Siddhant, as we continue to get our viewers the takeaways at this point. Let's also get in further perspectives now from our esteemed guest joining us on the broadcast. Let's also talk about the messaging that's come in from the Indian side. Ambassador Dinkar Srivastava, appreciate your joining us here on WION World is One. Your initial comment to what we are seeing playing out now, and how India has maintained its stance on zero tolerance on terror, and how that messaging has once again been reiterated now.
Thank you for having me. India has very clearly conveyed the message that terror activities will not be tolerated. We have also demonstrated our capacity for escalation dominance. Our initial action as well as subsequent action was proportionate. We avoided hitting civilian targets. Pakistan escalated it, and the Indian action showed that we could neutralize their military targets without collateral damage to civilian population. The spread or the extent of Indian strikes ranging from Rawalpindi, Islamabad to Karachi, and of course the middle sector and POK showed that India had far greater reach. Pakistan, of course, launched very heavy shelling as well as swarm attacks, but they were very shallow and the reach was limited. So I think a message has gone home And this is something which Pakistan military would do well to remember in future.
Right. Let's also talk about how India at this point comes across as a country that has not just given out its strong stance on terror and made that absolutely clear, but also in a way that it has tackled this through multiple measures, through diplomatic measures, a multi-pronged approach. And that also was the message that came out across very clearly to the world about India's standing, about India's diplomatic breakthroughs, and the way in which it got in support in this fight.
India managed to neutralize Pakistani support. There was no support for Pakistan, even for its Arab neighbors, Arab friends.
Yes.
In fact, it was striking that the the terror attack took place just a day after Prime Minister's visit to Saudi Arabia. After that, the Saudi Minister of State visited India and the Saudi Foreign Minister visited Pakistan. There were no statements of support of Pakistan's position from Arab countries. The only support it received was from Turkey and Azerbaijan. Even China was very lukewarm, and that diplomatic isolation coupled with the strong military response from India finally forced Pakistan to accept cessation of firing, let's describe it this way, which went into effect on at 5 o'clock today.
Indeed, and a quick word from you on the fact that this is coming at a time when India all throughout maintained that it was not interested in an escalation, while Pakistan had continued with unleashing aggression, and to which, of course, India responded befittingly and appropriately and gave out a strong message as well. But how Pakistan continued with those escalatory measures while India maintained that it was not interested in an escalation.
Yes, India not only said that, but our actions showed that our responses were very measured. Pakistan started with the terror strike and followed it up with heavy shelling across the LOCs, which resulted in killing of many civilians. India has, on the other hand, maintained its position and avoided collateral damage to civilian targets, even while it responded to Pakistani escalation by attacking, and this was the last round, 4 Pakistani air bases today morning.
Right, Ambassador, your thoughts also on what happens now onwards, now that we are looking at the way in which things have panned out after all those days of the messaging coming in from Pakistan as well, and what do you think really happened and went on behind the scenes?
I think the most interesting thing to watch will be the Pakistan's internal dynamics. This is a major, not just diplomatic, but military setback to Pakistan. And in the past, it has always been followed by, some stock taking and eventually change at the top. If you recall, after 65 war, Ayub had to go. It took time. Those were different days. But his fall was clearly linked to Pakistan's defeat in 65 war. After 71 war, Yahya had to go. That was very quick. After Kargil, there was a coup. Musharraf succeeded in reversing, and passing the blame to the civilian leadership. Pakistan is a highly divided society. Imran Khan, whose party won the largest number of votes, continues to be in jail. Let's see what is the reaction this time, because the civilian leadership of Shehbaz Sharif rests on support of General Asim Munir, and Asim Munir's prestige has suffered a shock. So there will be repercussions both within the army structure as well as the civilian leadership, which depends on its survival on the present army leadership. So let's see how it pans out in coming days. The rest are, technical details, but this will be the most interesting issue to watch out.
Right. Stay with me, Ambassador. Just a quick roundup for our viewers who might just be tuning in. We've been telling you about the reactions that have been coming in at this point and what things are looking like. Let's also remind our viewers about the reiteration that's come in from the Indian side about its stance on terror, where government sources have maintained that the diplomatic measures that were taken by India will also remain in place. That's a very significant takeaway coming in at this point, where not just the zero tolerance on terror message coming out very clearly from the Indian side, India also saying that its diplomatic actions will remain, which includes the Indus Waters Treaty abeyance and no rollback on visas, among other measures that were taken. Ambassador, what do you make of that, and what do you think is the message coming in from India through these moves?
I think it's a very mature policy. War and peace. This is not children's game. You can't, reverse the consequences overnight. And the message that we have put across is that there will be consequences for Pakistan, which are going to be long term. And these steps have to be maintained to translate into pressure on Pakistan military so that it does not revert to business as usual.
Ambassador, appreciate very much for joining us with those perspectives at this point. We're leaving it there for the moment, and as we continue our comprehensive coverage, we're taking a very short breather. We'll be right back on the other side. Stay with us.
Unlocking the future of finance.
Dive into the world of tokenization with me
as we yield the power of tokenization.
Discover the future of
ownership, where I decode, demystify tokenization for you.
Empowering the tokenized revolution.
Get ready to dive for an in-depth look at tokenization.
Busting the myths around tokenization.
Catch me on Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet only on WION.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at yowan.com.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Catch me on Token Money Magnet as we yield the power of tokenization only on WION.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets with the NSA Ajit Doval, the CDS Anil Chauhan, the Army Chief Upendra Dwivedi, the Air Force Chief AP Singh, and the Naval Chief DK Tripathi at the Prime Minister's house. The American Vice President reacts on India-Pakistan ceasefire and expresses gratitude to the leaders of India and Pakistan for their willingness to engage in the ceasefire. Jammu and Kashmir's Chief Minister Omar Abdullah welcomes the ceasefire announcement and is assured that the Jammu and Kashmir government will assess the damage that has been done and will start providing relief to the people.
Both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea.
Now, India and Pakistan agreed to a full and an immediate ceasefire. In a brief statement, the Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri announces that military action has been paused as of 5 p.m. on Saturday. In the wake of the ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan, the state governments in India withdraws the request for the voluntary closure of shops and other establishments. All shops and establishments are now permitted to operate as usual. In a significant announcement, India has confirmed that it has agreed to a ceasefire with Pakistan starting at 1700 hours Indian Standard Time. The ceasefire has come into effect on land, air and sea. Confirming this development, India said that Pakistan's DGMO had called his Indian counterpart at about 3:35 p.m. IST and had agreed to a ceasefire from 5 p.m. IST.
Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
Now, shortly after India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar put out, India has consistently maintained a very firm and an uncompromising stance against terrorism in all of its forms and manifestations, and it will continue to do so. Now, the announcement first came from the American President Donald Trump, who took to Truth Social to announce the truce. Now, Trump said that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and an immediate ceasefire after days of heightened tensions and cross-border attacks from both sides. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar confirmed the ceasefire on his X handle, saying that both nations have agreed to a ceasefire with immediate effect. The ceasefire has come after 4 days of intense conflict between the two nuclear-armed neighbours. India launched the Operation Sindoor on the 6th and the 7th of May in retaliation to the Pahalgam terror attack that killed 26 people. All right, now WION Siddhant is joining us with more details about this ceasefire. Siddhant, this is of course a big development. Give us a sense of what's in fact gone through behind the scenes. What's been done behind the scenes for this ceasefire to now come into effect?
Well, Mohammed, it has been long 4 days and pretty long day itself. But all in all, as they say, all is well that ends well. I'm standing in front of India's Foreign Ministry, and this is the building where essentially all the key briefings were taking place. But also, we know that today in this very building, the Indian side confirmed that they have achieved an understanding with the Pakistani side, while the US side has been claiming it's a ceasefire. The focus from the Indian side is first, it's an understanding which hinges on Pakistan's future behavior, including, of course, making sure that there is no cross-border terrorism. And secondly, in terms of how Pakistan engages with India. With the 4 days of development, India has been able to put a new deterrence on Pakistan, given the fact that the strikes happened deep in Pakistani territories, in various air bases, which were destroyed in a major way. And also, the second, of course, remains the abeyance of Indus Water Treaty. That is a legal terminology I am using, but simplifying for our viewers, the Indus Water Treaty essentially stands dead today, and India is free to use the waters of the Indus. And the third, of course, is to send a message of zero tolerance on terrorism.
Indeed, Siddhant, these are some pretty important implications. We'll of course discuss that, but I'm also told that we have Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, good morning to you. It is a deal that perhaps no one expected. About 2 hours ago, we saw Donald Trump's tweet where he said that the two nations, India and Pakistan, have now come to an agreement for a ceasefire. It must have been a very early morning for him in Florida. It had been about 7:30 in the morning that the President of the United States of America was tweeting about the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Give us a sense of what's in fact happened, because earlier the American position had been a lot more ambivalent to what was happening between India and Pakistan.
Yeah, Mohammed, it was indeed early mornings. And while President Trump did celebrate this, the Americans have always hoped that India and Pakistan would resolve this dispute bilaterally, and we saw that that happened, and have also said very publicly, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, the House Speaker, that ultimately terrorism has no place in India. So these have been the public sentiments and situations, but it does appear that talks with the Trump administration, because of its good relationship with both India and Pakistan, did happen, and ultimately this ceasefire took place. There were a series of events, Marco Rubio speaking to the Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir, which is understood in Pakistan to be the power center, and ultimately we really did see that it shows. And then it was followed by his counterpart in Pakistan, and then we heard about the telephone conversations, of course, between Marco Rubio and his Indian counterpart, S. Jaishankar. Today's statement was very interesting from the State Department. They said that they were very happy that this ceasefire has happened, and that the United States is willing to assist in any way possible moving forward. The wording of that really slightly suggests that, India and Pakistan ultimately, as they should, came together for this bilateral, and that the United States used its leverage to a certain extent, as a mediator, as a facilitator, which is very normal considering the great relationship that, first of all, President Trump has with Prime Minister Modi, and then, of course, the United States has to strategically monitor Pakistan as well, and the relationship that the United States somewhat has with Pakistan.
Indeed. Susan, do continue to stay on with us. Let me bring in my colleague Siddhant Sivalia. Siddhant, the fact that the Pakistani position changed dramatically, literally on its head since yesterday night, because yesterday the Pakistani Defence Minister had been stating that there is no other option for the Pakistanis except for an all-out war with India, and today Ishaq Dar, in his tweet announcing the ceasefire, said that Pakistan does not want a war with India. What's changed? How did Pakistan suddenly begin to see reason?
Well, situation remained evolving and quite fluid as well. The commentary from Pakistan was also very contradictory, but there were back-channel talks, it looks like, with the global capitals reaching out to New Delhi and Islamabad, both Riyadh and Washington. We saw the Saudi junior foreign minister visiting New Delhi and Islamabad. We also saw Marco Rubio speaking to both the Indian side, the Indian External Affairs Minister, and the Pakistani Army Chief, Mr. Munir. So essentially there was a focus as to how both sides can have conversations, and at the end of the day it looked like it worked out. But as India has been saying, it was bilateral, it was not mediated or brokered by any country, even though US has been claiming that they brokered the agreement between India and Pakistan.
Interesting. That's going to be a point of discussion in the days to come. Thank you very much, Siddhant Sivalia, for joining us and getting us all those details there. We'll, of course, come back to you as this story develops. And also joining us on the broadcast, we've got retired Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, the former GOC, who is, of course, joining us on this broadcast. General Sharma, thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and speaking to us here in WION. Now, considering the manner in which this war was escalating, especially the developments that had been happening in the last 24 hours, what do you think has now prodded the Pakistani establishment to agree to this ceasefire deal?
Thank you for inviting me, Mohammed. Look, if you follow the war of these 4 days, and I will call it a war, it was evident that, the Pakistanis in the first 2 days were trying to prod through as to try to find out our air bases and weaknesses in our air bases, and attempt to strike them subsequently once weaknesses are found. But it was also evident that the Indians did not go in the same manner in responding to Pakistan. We kept stating that whatever we are doing is non-escalatory in nature, and we did not want escalation. We did not mobilize the forces across to the borders. So it was not something like what happened in Parakram in 2001. We restrained ourselves, and our targeting was more directed and more focused towards strong targets. And it was evident after 2 days that the Pakistanis' endeavors have not been exactly making credible success. And like for example, previous night, yesterday night, they launched 400 odd drones from all over the sector, from Leh down to Sar Creek, and they did not meet credible advantage. However, on our own side, and I'll talk about geopolitics a little later,
right.
But on our own side, we were able to hit very substantial targets. 2 nights ago, we targeted Rawalpindi, and from Rawalpindi down all along the Pakistan frontier down to close to Karachi. So, when we're targeting a long frontier, and it was a very deliberate and very focused, and it was, there was success in it, substantial success in what we target. The Rawalpindi one landed in Rawalpindi. The one in Lahore destroyed the AD battery, the Chinese SQ-9 of the. So, that was one. In the last night, the areas that we hit were actually these 8 airfields, again Rawalpindi, Islamabad, and down to Sakar, and which is in Sindh. These were very strong targets, and they were very damaging targets for Pakistan. And if you follow the briefing that happened today evening, we have also listed a new set of 5-6 targets which were targeted today.
Right.
Like, for example, Skardu. Now, Skardu, if you see, is opposite Kargil, which is, in Baltistan. And targeting Skardu will be a very touchy affair for Pakistan. And all the other targets, Jacobabad, Gujranwala, were very strong targets. So ours were very focused and very powerful hits that we carried out to sort out the machinery, the wherewithal, and the standing of Pakistan Armed Forces. So while the geopolitics is one side, we did not sow 400 odd drones all over the place, many of them inert and decoys. We actually focused ourselves to targeting something strong.
Indeed, you've mentioned, very systematically, all the targets that India, in fact, struck in the course of the last 24, 48 hours, especially those air bases and their military bases. But the Pakistani strategy seemed to be much more diffuse in terms of what they were trying to do. They were using these saturation drone swarms and sending them across the border. What were the Pakistanis, purely from a military perspective, what were they trying to achieve with the tactics that they had deployed?
So it is obvious when the air war begins, both sides try to find out which is the weaknesses across there, and what we call it as SEAD, or suppression of enemy air defenses. So before you start targeting the opposing side, you want to suppress his air defenses so that you have a better leeway to carry out your tasks. The Pakistanis, it's apparent in first 2 nights, were trying to broad through using whole lot of swarms. Not one swarm together, but many swarms to all the airfields. The first day, you remember, it was starting from Avantipura down to Bhuj. Each one of the airfields around the western border was targeted by the Pakistanis to find as to where are we deploying our air defenses and how are we going to approach them. And most of these drones that they were deploying were decoys. They didn't have, they were inert decoys. So, when you start firing, and they were also probably hoping that we fire our best of instrumentation, best of weapon system to take on these. So their initial broad failed because we did not actually show our hand, so as to say, and we were able to take them on using direct firing weapons like N70 guns, which are not the S400 variety of missile systems. And their initial first failure and the second day failure gave rise to their opinion that, they cannot do anything strong. And when they tried a missile yesterday night, which is news are carrying it, the missile was downed in somewhere close to Sirsa. So,
Right.
it is apparent that their procedures for achieving what they wanted to achieve, that is decimating some of our airfields, was not succeed because of the plans that the Indian side had to defend ourselves.
Interesting. And also it's widely known that Pakistan probably has, ammunition where it can only fight a war for about 7 days. And it had been using essentially Chinese and also Turkish weaponry in the drone swarm attacks that it was carrying out. Do you think the fact that probably Pakistan was running out of its weapons and more weapons were not coming forth from China and Turkey is what perhaps made the Pakistanis agree to this ceasefire without any preconditions?
I would like to agree with you on this one. See, the fact of the matter is, never take your adversary lightly. When somebody says that we destroyed the AD battery in Lahore, Pakistanis would have immediately moved forward to use some repair reserves and fill the voids. And similarly in Sialkot, so they would have every country has reserves of weapon systems to be brought on when something gets destroyed. So I won't say that they may not have resilience to last for very long time. A protected war probably they can't take on. But to say that they can't even last 4 days or another 4 or another 10 days, I think that would be exaggerating a bit. The kind of collusion that Pakistan have with China and the kind of weaponry being provided by the Chinese is tremendous. And similarly, many other nations. So to say that, they were lesser equipped and all, or they didn't have so much of wherewithal, it may not be right. I think they had, but you see, there is also an issue of how much.
Right.
So, you can't allow everything to be finished off in 7 days and then say we have nothing left. So, yeah, Mohammed.
Before I get to the geopolitical question, General, I want to focus again on a military aspect of it, because there was a lot of chatter considering that Pakistan was using predominantly these Chinese weapons, that the Chinese wanted to test out their military hardware in active combat. The Chinese themselves haven't fought a war since 1978 when they had fought in Vietnam. So it was their military hardware that was being tested in this battle that they fought with India. In your assessment, how confident do the Chinese feel about how their military hardware has performed in this contest with India?
Again, I think it's slightly premature to make judgments about Chinese hardware at this juncture, because the full hand has not been unveiled. But let me put it this way: I think it's about 7-8 years ago when Pakistanis stopped getting military wherewithal from the United States, which was the largest supplier over 6 decades to Pakistan, and they turned over themselves to take on the Chinese equipment. So what they had is substantially Chinese equipment. That's the only equipment they could try out. They could fire. It's not that they were Chinese are wanting to try out the equipment, but that's the only thing available with the Pakistanis, except for, say, F-16s, which they have, which is of the American vintage, etc. So it is, when you open the hand, they had either JF-17s in strength, which has been manufactured there, and JF-10s, which are Pakistani aircraft. F-16s usage, the Americans frown upon when the Pakistani used against India. There was a thought process that F-16s were used in post-Balakot and Swift-Todd, and the Pakistanis had to say, no, we didn't use it. So the point is they were per force had to use the Chinese equipment. How did it perform? Well, that's an issue which requires little more analysis as to how did we target and what was the protective mechanism the Pakistanis used. So I today will not like to write off and say, no, Chinese equipment is not good. I think we must take it Chinese equipment is as good as any other military equipment across the world. And when we have to fight it out, if it doesn't perform, that's a bonus for us.
Interesting. And now a geopolitical question, General, because, India has made it clear. India will not tolerate cross-border terrorism. In fact, this entire war happened because of the Pahalgam terror attack. But considering what has happened in the last week, do you think India has now rewritten the rules of engagement for Pakistan's war by 1,000 cuts? This Pakistani old strategy of trying to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. Do you think the Pakistani military and the deep state will now take a hard look at fighting this war with 1,000 cuts?
Look, if I believe in our analysis of Pakistan over 7 decades, I don't think there would be a great change of heart in what has happened in last 4 days. Pakistan has got 4 nations within Pakistan itself. These 4 nations are moving in different direction altogether. And, to bind the four nations into one country, they require a glue. That glue is anti-Indianism.
Right.
If they lose anti-Indianism as the glue, then one fine day, Pakistan will fracture itself into 4 countries. Balochistan, the way Balochistan happening, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Sindh is also a restive province.
Absolutely.
So, anti-Indianism is not going to go away. It is also the Rasat Yatra for Pakistan Army. That army runs the country.
Absolutely.
Minute you say India is no more a threat and we are goody-goody with India, then you don't require the Pakistan army to rule that country. Then the politicians tend to take their prime space. Will the Pakistan army allow the politicians to rule the country on their own, and Pakistan army takes a back seat like in any democracy?
Right.
That will not happen. Because Pakistan army runs the country, as also in 7 decades also runs the industry.
Absolutely.
So it's their own livelihood that's at stake.
Indeed. I think you've summed it up so beautifully for us. Thank you very much indeed, General Rakesh Sharma, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you, Mohammed, for inviting me.
Also, let's take a look as to what the scene is at this moment in Ground Zero. Our special correspondent, Idris Sloan, has been getting us all the updates in terms of what is happening at the LOC and also what is happening in Srinagar. Take a look at this report sent by him.
After the announcement of ceasefire between India and Pakistan, the people of Jammu and Kashmir have finally breathing a sigh of relief, especially the ones who live close to the line of control and international border. We are finally seeing people in huge numbers coming out on the streets in Lal Chowk, which is a famous place, the Gantaghar of Srinagar, while as people across various districts of Jammu and Kashmir have finally come out their houses after 2 difficult days. We've seen how difficult it's been the last 48 hours, especially we've seen the drone attacks taking place in Srinagar, in Jammu, across many other places in Jammu and Kashmir. Meanwhile, there has been ceasefire violation and massive shelling going on from across the border at multiple places. We've seen properties worth crores being destroyed in that ceasefire violation, while as 22 people have lost their lives in the last few days because of the shelling from across the border. There are around 60 people who are injured and are being treated at the hospital. But finally, after the ceasefire, people have started coming out in huge numbers. There is relief on the faces we can see, and everyone is happy that finally both the countries have agreed that there'll be no more violence on the borders as well as in the hinterland. With video journalist Feroz, Idris Sloan for WION World is One.
All right, so that was my colleague Idris Sloan there getting us the latest from Srinagar. We'll slip into a short break, but don't go anywhere, for on the other side we'll get you the more details in terms of what is happening in the aftermath of this ceasefire that has been agreed this evening between India and Pakistan. That's coming up next. Stay tuned.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
The stress of